I'm trying to start a conversation is the most basic way you can say it. I'm trying to put a speaker in the ocean and talk to a whale and hope it talks back.
Starting playback.
If this work is successful, it will be the first experiment where we have engaged in a dialogue with a humpback whale.
People have been studying humpback song for 40, 50 years. And still, no one really knows why they sing. Something different is happening here.
This is very much the kind of material that I'm interested in. I'm so fascinated with animal culture and what we can gather from it. And I think that it's incredible that we get a glimpse into the humpback whale culture here, with how far their songs can reach geographically speaking, and how they perceive time and like the sounds, both past and present. What have these studies opened up for you? Like, do you walk in life with more of a pep in your step now? Do you evaluate your own culture and language and communication any differently?
Yeah, I mean, the implications of the work are, I think, profound. That's what drew me to this project. I mean, I started by reading the science and reading the journals and the books and the articles that were out there. And it painted a picture that was more interesting than any science fiction I'd ever seen or read before. And for me as an artist, as a filmmaker, it really is pushing me to create stories that expand the way we see ourselves. That just the idea that, you know, we're trying all the things we're doing, all these like wonderful like breakthroughs we're having with space travel, all this kind of stuff. It's, to me, the thing we're all trying to figure out is, what is it to be human? What's the sort of, what's the point of all this? Mm-hmm. What is our relationship to everything? How are we connected? Are we special? Are we not special, et cetera, right? And we have a lot of different kinds of institutions we've created that are trying to answer these questions or give us this context. And I think that the huge message that the science is showing us is that we cannot define what it is to be human based on humans alone. That's a feedback loop. And that's studying how other kinds of intelligence express culture, express communication, that will show us the shape of what it is to be a human being, because there's a lot of overlap between us and whales, us and horses, us and like everything, some more than others. But it's the boundary that's defined by where that overlap ends that I think is what it is to be a human being. So anyway, as an artist, it really pushes me.
The one section that probably meant the most to me when watching this, because it's fascinating learning all these facts and seeing the process and the waveforms and everything. But I really appreciate how you also take some times to really capture these scientists like living, like having a moment to themselves. And I think the moment that meant the most to me, because I'm a parent, is that discussion about motherhood. Because it causes me to think about the sacrifices that I make in the line of work that I'm in. Like I'm a creative person, but I also, I'm a journalist. I'm like, this is what I do all day long. And I'm sure you can relate to that as well as somebody who is in that line of work of being a creative. So I'm curious if did that moment, or just being a part of this and seeing all the hard work that goes into doing what they need to do to collect this information, did it cause you to think about the sacrifices that you make to thrive in the work that you're in?
Yeah, it very much did. I mean, I think one of the reasons that moment is in the film is because I could relate to it so much. I spend enormous amounts of time away from home, away from people I love, away from everything that makes me me, in order to totally enrapture myself in another story. And I have to be really present for it. And I have to, you're just not thinking about yourself, for weeks and months, because you're trying to really like do justice to these other people's stories. So the sacrifice is huge, but in some ways, the takeaway of the scene isn't, I hope that the takeaway of the scene is, besides from acknowledging the sacrifice that's involved, but also it doesn't have to be this way, Sure. It is possible for the institutions we work for to support the idea of families and paternity and maternity leave, and God forbid, like bringing a kid with you to work, to sort of, there's what was once called apprenticeship, and learning those things from a young age. So I think that that's a huge part of it also. It doesn't have to be a struggle to incorporate family with work, even if you are going out to sea. But it currently is enormously and disproportionately so for women. Yeah, there's a Times, the Times has been covering this a few times, and they had a piece like yesterday about the birth rate or whatever going down, 20 somethings not wanting to have kids. And they frame it as if like everyone's so ambitious that they don't want to have kids anymore. And it's like, I just think that the institutions that are employing us are not making it easy.
Yeah.
I don't think they don't want to have families at a young age. I think they feel like they have to choose. And so if it wasn't a choice they had to make, anyway, it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this is something that I'm always curious about. I think it's especially appropriate here with what we're left thinking about from the ending. When you're done filming and the assembly's done and the film is out, are you done researching the things that you cover in your films, or will you continue to follow these ladies' work?
Well, they're my friends, and I'm a total groupie for both of them. I mean, that's what this film was an excuse to do, was just like hang out with like incredibly smart people, who go to really amazing places and see what they do and how they do it. So I hope that Michelle and Ellen will continue to pick up the phone when I call them to just like nerd out on what they're doing. In terms of professionally, the film that I am in the very beginnings of sort of researching is definitely a branch off the same tree that Fathom came out of. It's all related thematically. These are things that I'm really interested in, will probably go after the rest of my career.
Something else that I think that you capture in this film that I haven't really seen before is getting a sense of the waiting game. Like it's like even one of them says something about it, like because you spend so much time, like other documentaries will just kind of disregard all that. Like I'll watch like Disney nature documentaries, and then they'll capture these really beautiful moments, but I'm very curious about those in between moments of them sitting there waiting to try to capture this. But it's a little different for you because your focus is on their reactions to these big moments.
Oh, it's funny. It's one of my favorite writers, Charles Bowden. A quote of his actually opens the film, but a different thing he wrote once was how a lot of these nature documentaries, everything is just how nature is just darting around and running around and trying to survive and trying to reproduce. And occasionally they're cute when they're really young, and then back to like reproduction and survival and this and that, and how hard it is. And he said, it's these kind of almost unfilmable moments of quiet that is actually where the grace of nature exists. And I think that's true for us too. There's a reward at the end of it. And you have to earn those moments of quiet and waiting. Because hopefully, I want the audience to kind of be leaning in their seat a little bit and trying to be like, do you hear a whale? Did you hear that? I don't know if they heard anything, so it's part of the experience, and it's wonderful when you're out there, and we were hoping to bring that to the screen as well, to the movie.
Yeah. So when there's like instances where like the engine of the boat fails, do you ever feel that impulse to want to intervene, like provide your own thoughts of like, oh, how can we get out of this situation? Or is it important for you as a documentarian to keep your distance and allow them to figure it out on their own?
I have no engine expertise whatsoever. Every single one of them, particularly Michelle. I mean, Michelle bailed me out when 2 of my electric generators just completely went kaput, and she like jerry-rigged an extra inverter she had, and like made sure she's the reason why I was able to film the second half of that field season. My general rule is that the only time I put the camera down if there's something where someone's safety is at stake, and I won't hesitate to put it down and be there as needed and help people out. But in terms of their process of working out, problem solving things that will make or break their research, that's part of the work. That's part of what needs to be witnessed, what needs to be recorded and incorporated into the film. If I did have any tips, by the way, of like how to repair an engine, I would have certainly shared it with them when I wasn't filming. But in that, the point of it is to show not what people are like when a filmmaker is there, but what people are like when they're not there. And I've heard Megan and Ellen both attest to the fact that what's in the film is exactly what they would have been doing had I not been there. So I think we got that. Yeah. I mean, I've never had this happen, but like, I don't know, if I was filming Michelle and there was like a mosquito on her cheek, I'd probably say something, because it would just like, I'd be like, I just can't not, say something about that. But that never happened. They were, if anything, it was me. I was the person that needed to bail out and save and interrupt the camera filming for like, Drew, you're about to back up into the water. You should probably stop, for a second. So yeah.
So when you're filming this, is it important for you as you're capturing it to understand everything? Because I'm not sure, like when they're going through the process, because some of it we're watching them do it, but you have them do the commentary later, or record their audio later, so they can kind of fill in those voids for the audience. But as you're capturing it, is it important for you to know everything about it, or do you just kind of let them go and trust that in the end it's all going to make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've before I'm with them in the field, I've done as much research as I possibly can. I've talked with the researchers for hours and hours and hours about what their process is. There wasn't really a moment that I can think of in either of their field seasons where what was happening was over my head. So I think I understood what they were doing and why they were doing it almost all the time. But that required like I said, that required hours of like interviewing and reading that I'm not expecting an audience to come to. So the really challenging part about this film is that was the most challenging part for me, was distilling pretty nuanced and pretty complicated science in as palatable a form as possible with narration. And they were co-writers in that. They really helped me do that.
And as we wrap up, there was something that was really interesting to me that they mentioned in the film, which is that being on the small boat, like whales could capsize you as you're on the water. So what's going through your head when you're heading out into the water, not knowing how a whale or whales will respond to these communications?
Blissful ignorance. I put complete faith in Michelle as my captain, and when I have the camera in my hands, all I'm thinking about is the work. I'm just thinking about doing justice to her and doing justice to her assistants, doing justice to the whales, doing justice to the environment. I am thinking about, oh my God, if I drop the camera in the water, it's just going to sink 400 meters and that'll be the end of it. I'm thinking more about not screwing up and wasting their time for having put me on a boat. That's what I'm thinking about. Afterward, yeah, you start thinking about like, oh yeah, that we were really out there and that was a whale that was really close to us. And you start thinking about it, but by then, you have a safe distance and you're not freaking out. So part of my job is to not panic ever when I'm doing my work. So I'm pretty good at it.
Studying whale culture might be more about glimpsing something of ourselves, how we can connect differently 1 million years from now.